They say the footage was never meant to surface, fleeting, warped frames found in a private estate sale in Charleston. But in those 8 seconds you can hear her, a woman whispering, "Do not let them see my eyes." Then comes the scraping of chains against wooden floorboards. Yet she wasn't a prisoner, not officially, not legally. Her file lists her as patient for 1B, subject of voluntary transfer, but the bruises, the carvings along her spine, and the stitched symbol beneath her left rib told a story no institution dared document. According to rumor, she was the most desired woman ever brought into Charleston's hidden markets, not a market of bodies, but a market of minds, an illicit network where wealthy families, church elites, and secret societies bought access not to people, but to the strange abilities they carried. And her ability terrified them all. Her name was Elara Voss, a name whispered in the archives of the old St. Odorin Seminary, scribbled on brittle paper in a trembling hand. She sees the memory beneath the memory. Tonight, we go back into the sealed basements beneath the Charleston waterfront, into abandoned orphanages, shuttered parish houses, and the rotting docks where nobles once arrived under moonless skies, because the story of Elara Voss wasn't just hidden, it was buried deliberately, and those who tried to expose it vanished one by one. The auction was never public. No posters, no invitations, no names spoken aloud. It took place in a warehouse on Chalmers Street, its windows covered with blackened paper, its door guarded by men who carried no firearms, only cattle prods modified with strange copper coils. Inside, the elites of Charleston gathered, pastors, widows, plantation heirs whose fortunes were collapsing after Reconstruction, university chancellors desperate for influence. They claimed they came to witness a demonstration of unusual human cognition, but their ledgers told the truth. They came to buy whatever gave them power over others. At 11:43 p.m., a bell rang. The floorboards vibrated as a wooden cage was rolled out, not to contain Elara, but to shield the audience from her. Thick planks, iron nails, a tiny barred window at eye level. When the handler opened it, silence fell. Her eyes were covered with black cloth, not to protect her, to protect them. A pastor in the front row whispered, "Is she sedated?" "No," the handler replied. "Sedation disrupts the visions." Visions, that was the word they used when they were too afraid to say the other one. Prophecy. This was the night Charleston's hidden market bid on a woman who could see the memories people wanted most desperately to hide. And those who bid highest were the ones with the most to fear. Elara didn't come from nowhere. She came from the ruins of the Merrifield Orphan Home, a brick building built in 1834 and condemned in 1889 after its third unexplained fire. According to the surviving registry, Elara was admitted at age 6, under parent, guardian. The matron wrote, "Delivered by unknown man." Carried symbol, eyes covered. That symbol, the same one later found stitched under her rib, was a circle broken by a single vertical slash. Investigators in later years would call it a family crest. But old parish records suggest something more disturbing. It was the insignia of an early psychological sect called the Gentle Order, a group obsessed with what they called the memory beneath consciousness. Children who entered the orphanage with that mark rarely stayed long. Some were adopted by wealthy families who had no interest in children before. Others disappeared from the books entirely, replaced by forged lines of ink and false dates. Elara's early behavior terrified the staff. She awakened at night, screaming in languages no one recognized. She refused to look at mirrors, and when other girls whispered secrets in dormitory beds, Elara would murmur those secrets before they spoke them aloud. At age 12, she predicted the death of the matron's nephew. 3 days later, he drowned in a well. After that, they tied blindfolds over her eyes and sedated her daily. But sedation never erased what lived inside her. It only made it more aware of those trying to suppress it. The orphanage's decline began with a single disappearance, one that authorities quietly ignored. Clara Winslow, age 9, vanished from her bunk. No broken window, no forced door, only a single sliver of charcoal left on her pillow, as if someone had drawn a thin vertical line beside where her head had been. The children said Elara had been awake that night. The children said she heard Clara being erased, not taken, erased. When questioned, Elara simply whispered. Clara knew something she wasn't allowed to remember. The matron punished her for speaking nonsense, but the staff took precautions. They moved Elara to an isolated cell in the basement, a room known as the Quiet Box, used in earlier decades to punish children who invited dark influences. After Elara's relocation, more children vanished, 1, then 2, then 5 in the same winter. Each time that same charcoal slash was found. By the spring of 1889, 14 children had vanished without a trace. The matron blamed disease, runaway impulses, and record-keeping errors. But her journal found years later betrayed her terror. The Voss girl hears their footsteps before they arrive. She says the order will reclaim its experiments. God save us all. 3 weeks later, the orphanage burned for the third and final time. Patterns emerged after the orphanage fire. A man dressed in a grey wool coat had been seen near Merrifield days before the disaster. Witnesses described him as expressionless, moving like someone counting steps, and carrying a leather case the size of a skull. This man never named was later identified in sketches as a senior figure in the Gentle Order. I thought disbanded after the Civil War, but it had not disbanded. It had gone underground, rebranding itself as a network of private research societies in Charleston, Savannah, and New Orleans. Their interest was simple: obtain children with unusual cognitive anomalies, then study or exploit them. Elara was their greatest prize. After the orphanage fire, she was smuggled out not by firefighters, but by men carrying the Order's crest. They placed her in a carriage with windows painted black and delivered her to a hospital that did not officially exist, the Eastern Institute for the Aberration Sciences. There, doctors measured her responses to photographs she couldn't see. They asked her to describe strangers' fears. They whispered lies into her ear and documented how her body reacted. Notices were whispered to families. What terrified them most wasn't those who could pay not only money she refused to speak aloud. The auction took place. Their logs recorded phrase repeated many times. Church, the memory is not mine. The smell of mold and candle smoke. By age 19, Elara was chained lightly to a pedestal, so the institute did what all fearful institutions do. The bidders did not look at her face. They looked at her hands, trembling slightly, glowing faintly under the torchlight. A subtle aura, a pulse. Those who had spent nights in the institute recognized the sign. She could feel what others could not even remember. One buyer, a plantation heir whose fortune had been reduced to ink-stained ledgers, whispered, "How much for the visions?" The auctioneer, voice thick with a preacher's timbre, replied, "The price is your own reflection. Your secrets are the currency here." Bidding was frantic, not for possession, but for the promise of power. Some threw gold coins, others left notes sealed with wax, pledging silence, obedience, and loyalty. When the hammer fell, Elara was no longer under institutional control. She belonged, officially, to the hidden market. Yet Elara did not fear them. Fear, she understood, was only another memory waiting to be unlocked. Few outside the city knew Charleston had a network that rivaled the whispered cabals of Europe, hidden behind shuttered warehouses and abandoned shipyards. The markets existed for centuries, dealing in curiosities and anomalies. Here, the wealthy came not for flesh, but for abilities, clairvoyance, premonition, memory manipulation. Elara was a prized attraction. At first, the elite brought her only to observe. They asked questions they dared not write down. What does my late father regret? Will my sister betray me? Which night will the fire strike again? Each answer came as a whisper or a tremor. Some fainted, some fled, and some, those who pressed too hard, never left. Even the oldest merchants admitted in hushed tones, "She does not belong to anyone, not even us." Elara's beauty was irrelevant. The tails of her face were exaggerated to draw buyers. What made her unforgettable was the aura of impossibility surrounding her. She moved like someone who understood time differently. She spoke like she had swallowed the memories of 1,000 people and spit them out. Selectively, visitors reported a strange magnetism, whispers in the corners, shadows that flickered toward her, cold drafts along the walls even in summer. Some swore they saw a second figure following her, a reflection moving independently, hinting at the memory beneath the memory beneath the memory. It was said she could unlock a person's deepest trauma with a single glance, leaving them changed forever, sometimes violently, sometimes silently, but always irreversibly. The first prominent victim was Reverend Tobias Durham, a man who preached morality but indulged secretly in gambling and poison debts. At the market, he dared to ask Elara, "Tell me what sins I must hide." Elara looked at him for 7 seconds. That was all it took. His eyes widened. He clutched his chest. 3 days later, he was found dead in his study, ledger open, ink smeared in frantic loops. The coroner ruled it heart failure, but no one believed it in whispered circles. It became clear, no one who revealed too much to Elara survived unscathed, and those who tried to expose her influence vanished entirely. Some of Charleston's most respected clergy frequented the hidden markets, not for wealth, not for desire, but for knowledge. They whispered their prayers to Elara, asking for visions of divine will. But their sermons began to change, dark, accusatory, unnerving to congregations. One priest left a diary entry. "She knows my confession before I speak it. I cannot reconcile her presence with God. My hands shake even now, and the parish notices my eyes have turned inward." Seeing nothing, the church tried to intervene, attempting to buy her from the market, but the order had placed a final seal. Elara was untouchable. She could not be sold again. The auctioneer had spoken. She belongs to memory itself. Elara's new owners experimented continuously. They constructed cages, not of iron, but of mirrors, forcing her to confront infinite reflections of herself while simultaneously observing the intentions of those who entered. Psychologists called it controlled exposure therapy. Occultists called it the right of seeing. Elara endured, her mind untouched, while her captors slowly unraveled. Sleep became impossible for them. Hallucinations tormented them. Shadows in their chambers whispered forbidden truths. By age 23, she had witnessed more deaths and secrets than most people lived through in 10 lifetimes, yet her eyes remained serene, calm, observing, waiting. Section 12. The first escape attempt. A young servant tried to smuggle her out, thinking he could claim freedom for both. He had not learned to read her aura. Within minutes of stepping outside the market, he collapsed, clutching his own chest. The only sound he could produce. She saw me. She saw me. The market reinforced its security. Secret passages were sealed, windows bricked, guards trained to recognize the slightest unease in visitors' posture. Elara did not resist. She did not flee. She did not beg. And that was more terrifying than any chains. Locals whispered about the strange noises coming from abandoned warehouses, low moans, faint wailing, and the clinking of chains. Authorities investigated but found nothing. Those who dared enter the markets at night reported a single word repeating in unison with the echoes of the past: remember, remember, remember. Elara had unlocked a corridor to the past for them, a past no one was allowed to remember. By 1905, Charleston's elite had begun to fear her more than they feared bankruptcy or scandal. Some locked themselves in monasteries. Others fled to Europe, never to return. But the hidden market persisted, growing darker and more clandestine with each passing decade. In 1912, a delegation from New Orleans arrived. Scholars and occult practitioners, they sought Elara's insight for reasons not even they fully understood. They conducted elaborate rituals, recording her utterances. After one such session, a historian's journal described, her eyes shifted. It is as if she looked not at me, but through me, past the walls, past the city, and I understood truths I was never meant to know. I will never sleep again. These visitors brought with them new patrons, expanding the market into a network across the South, each node tied to families, churches, and seminaries with secrets buried deep. Elara Voss' body bore markings that no surgeon could replicate. The stitched symbol under her rib, faint scars across her wrists, and a small tattoo of a fractured eye on her shoulder were all part of the ritual she had endured in childhood. Researchers debated its purpose. Some claimed it amplified perception. Others whispered it allowed her to carry the memories of multiple people at once. Visitors, upon seeing her, claimed the marks moved subtly, reshaping themselves in dim light. No one could touch them without pain. No one could erase them. No one could claim her as property. She existed between life and observation, an artifact of the city itself. By 1920, newspapers, diaries, and ledgers documenting the market, the auctions, and Elara herself began to disappear. Fires, floods, thefts, nothing explained. The sudden erasure of so many documents. Researchers today believe this was orchestrated. The market ensured no outsider could reconstruct its history. Even the Eastern Institute's archives vanished, leaving only whispers and shadows in the memory of the city. Elara, however, remained untouched, observing, remembering everything. Families whose ancestors attended the auctions report strange patterns: sudden madness, violent deaths, inexplicable misfortunes. Psychologists describe it as intergenerational trauma, but folklore insists Elara watched them. Those who survive recount a single memory: a pale, serene woman, eyes veiled, speaking truths no one was meant to hear, watching as the guilty trembled in rooms long abandoned. In 1947, a curious journalist attempted to find her. He traced the hidden market to an abandoned church. Inside, he reported hearing whispers, not human, not entirely sound, but memory made audible. He claimed to see a woman in a mirror, dozens of reflections, all staring at him, but when he turned, the room was empty. His final article was published posthumously. It consisted entirely of blank pages save for one line: "She is still here. She sees everything. Remember, no one knows where she went after 1950. Some claim she died. Others insist she still exists in Charleston, watching from shadows, or beneath basements of forgotten seminaries. The market may have vanished, but the city itself remembers her. Strange, unexplainable deaths, secrets revealed in dreams, and fleeting glimpses of a veiled woman with eyes that are never truly closed. She became more than a person. She became a symbol, a memory etched into the conscience of Charleston. The story of Elara Voss is a warning. Institutions, families, churches, and seminaries may hide secrets they do not wish revealed, but some truths resist suppression. They persist in whispers, shadows, reflections, and the tremors of memory that surface when no one is looking. Elara reminds us that the human mind can be both weapon and witness, that trauma can travel unseen, that power belongs not to the fearful or the greedy, but to those who remember, who observe, and who survive within the liminal spaces of history. And perhaps, if you are listening closely, she is watching you now.